renewed recommendations up on the screen, which reflect the ongoing nature of this work. Would somebody like to move those recommendations?
I thought Lawrence had already moved them.
No.
Oh.
No, he suggested some changes and they've now been finalised and we're ready to move. Would you like to move them, Lawrence? Moved by Councillor Kirby, seconded by Councillor Wilson. Right of introduction, Councillor Kirby.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to again reiterate some of the comments that were made during questions around the sizable work that goes on amongst council staff in terms of our policy and strategies and approaches that most of our community will never see. But I think the way that it's laid out in this particular report and the table that's associated just really does make it clear for us and for our community the amount of work that is going on in this space. So thank you to staff for those improved ways of representing that hidden work that happens within the council walls. So happy to take these recommendations, noting the last recommendation that's just been added, which does give us room for the fact that this is a moving feast where we are influenced, particularly in the policy area, by what is happening external to us, particularly from central government. So I think that's a fair noting in terms of that recommendation. So happy to move these.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, a couple of things I wanted to acknowledge. This is the most transparent council in living memory in Kapiti, without doubt. And this program shows that. It's illustrative of the enormous work that's being done and constantly being updated. 72 projects and requiring policy and strategy and just bylaws and planning and God knows what else. Plus another 46 projects, right? For over the next 3 years. And so it always concerns me when I hear a really simplistic view of what council does and how it does it. It isn't simple, it's complex, and it requires some intelligence to get these things across the line, and there seems to be a deficit of that in some of the commentary that's going on. So the other one too is that I wanted to acknowledge that central government forces a reprioritisation. So we have a plan, but sometimes you just kind of have to shift that because we've got only the resources that we've got, and also the fact that we have the flakiest government in living history, who are constantly rejigging things that local government has to pick up the pieces for and has to reprioritise at our expense very often as well, and at significant expense. So the fact that you guys have been able to keep all of this going in a stable and coherent way, I think is absolutely fabulous. So you should be congratulated on that. And as a council, our job really is to just keep supporting that process. It's a good process. Good processes get good outcomes quite often. So, yeah, that's me.
Councillor Pravanov.
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate the the massive work program this is, and acknowledge that it's certainly a moving feast in terms of our timeframes and what is actually included in the policy work. I just wanted to note that A has also been changed, including editorial amendments, which relates to the climate change and resilience component of the policy. Thank you.
Excellent. So I agree with Councillor Wilson about this now being really clear and transparent, this work program, and reflecting the complexity of what happens in this space. I think how it feels more transparent to us as councillors too is that we've been taken on a journey with this. We've had input into it. We've workshopped it. We know what's going on. And Councillor Handford's committee has had a huge hand in helping develop this work program as well, Strategy, Operations and Finance, and I'd like to acknowledge the work of that committee. And the layout, as Councillor Pravanov said, is clear and it's just a really great piece of work and gives us a really good foundation and understanding of the things we need to achieve over the coming years ahead of the next long-term plan. So huge thanks to staff and my fellow elected members for the work that's gone into this. Right of reply, Councillor Kirby? Waived. I'll put that to the vote. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? That's carried. Thank you. So I'll now just pop back to item 11.2, approval to consult on the Freedom Camping bylaw. I trust elected members have had a chance to look at the documents in the hub. And I'll pass to council staff.
Morena, everyone. Just to provide you a bit of context before discussion on the report is we've started the review of the current Freedom Camping policy, which was last set in 2012. Over the last year, we've been working through it. The policy itself sits along the Freedom Camping Act, which was introduced in 2011, and it's quite important that that Freedom Camping Act enables freedom camping across public areas unless restricted or managed under the Act, or specifically under a bylaw made under that Act. So as we've discussed over that last year, we've talked about some of the changes over more frequent years, including the changes to the Act around self-contained freedom camping being the focus of enablement, and other changes to enable non-self-contained only where identified by councils through a bylaw. And the other thing we've also talked about is the increasing numbers, particularly post-COVID. We've seen a really large increase in numbers of people travelling the country and experience the beautiful places we've got to see, and that's also been a case here in Kapiti with increased accessibility to some of the areas. So that has actually had an impact, but there's also been some opportunities that we might be able to tap into that. So that's been the focus of the review we've been looking at, and we've identified and discussed some of those challenges and issues that we're experiencing locally, with particularly around the numbers and locations of pressures, but also those opportunities around tourism and supporting some of those outcomes for visitors and experiences to the district. One of the key things we've discussed as part of that journey is the limitations of the current policy and the ability to kind of enforce and manage some of those impacts. And so as part of what a best approach to managing them might be, we've been exploring the potential for a bylaw and the additional powers and opportunities that presents to manage those as a proposed approach going forward. So today we've got a package in front of you to culminate those discussions and some of the processes we've done to assess sites, to identify where there might be limitations put on access, restricted access or prohibited sites, which is enabled under the Act through the making of a bylaw. So there's been a specific assessment process we've gone through, and that's been identified in the proposed approach that's in front of you today. Just to note, a key component of looking at those limitations around council land is that the reserves are excluded from this process, and they are actually being taken forward as part of the reserve management plan process that council's currently undertaking as well. So they will look separately at any opportunities alongside these for the ability to support freedom camping on council's reserve lands. So with the package in front of us today is looking to present to you for your feedback and approval to then put out for public consultation to test that proposed approach in the settings that we've proposed around those sites, and to get any feedback on the sites and some of those restrictions proposed, but anything more widely about what's been proposed as well. So happy to take the report as read and take any questions.
Just before we hand over, I just want to ensure that we've really clearly reiterated the opportunity councils have in this space is to identify areas for restriction. So you've heard Hamish say limitations, or I'll use the word where we might prohibit activity. It isn't that we can say that we don't want freedom camping. So a national direction has been set to say freedom camping is something we want to do in New Zealand. We have the ability to say, sure, great, but not in these places. That is what we are consulting on. And today we're asking you to look at the work that's been done to date, to engage our community on. It could be that further changes come through on that basis, so it is not a final proposal. So you may also hear feedback and wish to put forward through that process some further changes. So just wanted to set that out at the beginning, so we're really clear on what's been asked for in terms of a decision today. Thank you.
Questions? Councillor Coe.
Yeah, thank you. Just following on from that, actually, I just want to be really clear on this, and I'll use an example, Tahori Beach, which is obviously of great personal interest to me. So what we're saying is that people are allowed to freedom camp. We're saying you can't do it here, or in this area over here, there's restrictions. So on that basis, then anywhere in between, people can freedom camp so long as they're complying with the requirements of the Act. Is that correct? So if we take Tahori Beach, for example, we're saying there will be no freedom camping in that area of Sea Road, but other than that, people can freedom camp anywhere else on Tahori Beach. Is that correct? So long as they comply with all the, self-contained requirements, and et cetera, et cetera.
So there are some definitional requirements, and without having a picture in my mind of that specific location, the requirements of the Act, I'm just trying to find them now. I don't have them immediately to hand here, but I could find them with some help.
Is the short answer yes? So effectively, in what we've put out, we have indicated the areas where we are putting some kind of restriction, limitation, or saying it's prohibited.
Yeah.
And that's what we're consulting on.
Yeah.
If it's not in there, then unless legislation says for whatever reason you can't, you can. So
Right.
if somebody, you've used Seaview Road as an example, if the next street over, somebody was freedom camping and it's not prohibited in any other way, then they can.
Right.
So yes.
I just think that needs to be made clear somehow in the
Thank you.
information that goes out to the public
Yeah.
that that is the case. So for any areas not designated in here, the only requirements are as per the Act. So long as they're complying with that, then they're all fine.
Correct.
Yeah, and yeah, when we put out for consultation, people need to, because I think what we're asking for is feedback from the community around other areas where we might restrict or prohibit. Have we gone far enough in terms of those requirements?
So Hamish is just helpful, and it is in the statement of proposal, which I do acknowledge you have had for a brief period of time to consider.
Yeah.
But paragraph 4, or page 3 of that document, does say in it that to be freedom camping, it must be within 200 metres of an area accessible by a motor vehicle, or within 200 metres of a mean low water spring line of any sea or harbour, or on or within 200 metres of a formed road or Great Walks track. And there's some more detail in there. So we have included it in the statement of proposal, but do take your point that I think it's really important to be clear about what can be prohibited and what the wider settings enable. So that's clear to people as we consult.
Yeah, and I think as we consult, we should be saying specifically to people, have we clearly identified the areas where it should be prohibited or restricted, or are there other areas that we could include in that category?
Yep. And I guess just a caveat and qualifying around this too, it's about council-owned and managed land as well. So this
Right.
doesn't include the coverage, and that's the common parlance. If you go through the district, there's lots of areas we might be familiar with where we might see some level of activity, but might in fact be NZTA or even Crown land. So this is focused about those activities on our land.
Okay, well,
and there's slightly
again, I
different
think that
provisions.
needs to
So
come
that's
through
kind of in
in the
there, but we can
document.
make sure it comes out a bit
I
more
think,
clearly.
it needs to be, more headline material. So the other question I have, which is an obvious one, I guess, but how are we going to enforce these bylaws, and do we have resource to do that? Because there's no point having bylaws if there's no enforcement of them.
There is some discussion in the paper around that, and our environmental standards team currently do monitoring and have identified that they do have capacity within the current baseline
Yeah.
to continue that monitoring. One of the things about the bylaws themselves is they do provide specific access to additional powers, including infringement capability that we don't currently have. So it's just another tool in the package of things available to help manage those. And so part of that ongoing management has been there. We've built that capacity over the last few years. Previously, we've been fortunate enough to get access to some of the government funding around camping ambassadors, but that process has now been brought on as part of our internal capacity as well to monitor and manage the sites going forward in broader activity. I'm not sure if Brendan wants to add anything.
Only that the team are looking at some tools as well. So there are some tools that other councils use across the country where Freedom Campers book these locations, and so we can access those. We can monitor when groups or Freedom Campers are going to turn up and leave locations. So it's a tool that we can use. So we're looking at the moment. That'll help us inform us when people arrive and leave. Each site will have dedicated car parks. So it'll make the monitoring or compliance side of it a little bit easier than just kind of doing the spot checks. So that's a tool that we're looking at. And then just going back to the previous question, there's that reserves management consultation going on almost at the same time as well, regards to Te Horo. And so so we're looking at the classification of all the reserves land across the district, and so there's an opportunity to feedback on that process regards to what can and can't be done on our reserves too. So two pieces of work going on at the same time.
Yeah. Okay, just my final question is around the use of volunteer ambassadors. So I'm on the committee of the Friends of Te Horo Beach Association, and we've been talking about having within our community volunteer ambassadors to give information to people on freedom camping and driving along the beaches. And I just wonder if that's something that may be considered, that these people would obviously not be issuing tickets or enforcement notices or whatever, but just giving information to people, because what we find with people on the beach is that they're actually unaware, because they haven't read the signs, or the signs aren't easily visible. They're not aware of what the arrangements are. So these ambassadors would just hand out information and say, are you aware that you are in breach of blah blah blah. And I think there are people living particularly in the coastal areas, that are quite passionate about protecting their communities, who would be probably willing to volunteer for that sort of thing. So
Yeah, I can say that we are looking at it. The team are looking at it. The beach patrols the work that we kicked off over the summer was a step to where we want to head. I think Horowhenua are using or trialled community patrols over this recent summer, and so we'll catch up with them and have conversations with them just to see if it worked or not, and whether we implement it in the future. We'll make the decision. But it's one of the conversations that we are having, how we can use community to patrol these beaches.
Yeah, great, thank you.
Councillor Wilson?
Yeah, I think bylaws by their very nature tend to get amongst people quite quickly, but the optics of this I think are quite important, that we are very welcoming of visitors to Kapiti, and that this enables that. It enables that to be done in a way that works, rather than creating negative tensions there. So a couple of questions, one of which is, have we had much in the way of feedback from Visit Kapiti? Have they inputted into this?
Visit Kapiti, meaning our tourism?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, they have. So we tried to balance this to say we obviously want to prohibit, but we also want to ensure that we are supporting tourism and increased visitor presence and economic growth for our district.
Yeah, because the sell for me of this is that we are actually promoting tourism, and this is a really positive thing, rather than it just being a bylaw that says, we're going to drive you all out of town. I also wanted a couple of questions. One is the relationship with neighbouring councils, Horowhenua, Porirua, Greater Wellington, Dock, about, as Hamish has pointed out, we're dealing with our land, but we know within our land there's a whole bunch of places that isn't ours, like Greater Wellingtons and Docks, etc. And so the relationship with them in terms of the bylaw, are we...
So that's an ongoing kind of discussion as part of the operational level about management. We have had discussions to understand the approaches for their areas of land and how they sit and fit with us. In particular, we've also had some discussions with the links with other councils and slightly different approaches that they're having, but more specifically in our district, the areas of land and what's there and not is kind of informed by part of ongoing discussions, I guess, where issues might arise and be made, brought to our attention, but not on our land. So that happens on a operational basis.
And I guess it's helpful if, like, in terms of enforcement via education, if the, like, because Freedom Campers, generally speaking, are people who are travelling around the countryside, and so if there's a kind of a connected up approach from other councils, so that people go, oh, well, actually that's the standard pretty much everywhere, and this is how you access where you can stand, where you can be and where you can't. So yeah, I guess we're doing that, right?
That's very much part of the focus. There's some discussion in there about the need for on-site signage, so people know what's expected where and when, but there's also equal focus and need for a final package that's agreed by council, will be supported by updated information, reaching out with other partner organisations, providing that information about access to facilities, what the do's and don'ts are. But also, I should have said before, even though we've got a bylaw, obviously education is an important component of that too, so it's not just the sharp end of the stick. It is about that kind of, helping people. Most people want to do the right things.
Yep.
So how do you support that? But at the same time, having a few more opportunities to use other mechanisms where that might not be the case as well.
Yeah. And my last question is around flexibility for events in prohibited areas. So if we have...
Is this related to the content of the bylaw?
Yeah, it
Is,
is, because in the bylaw we've got, you'll see all the prohibited areas. The word that you were the last word you wanted to use was prohibited, but there are prohibited areas. And so when we have occasional events, like just recently there was 3,000 odd people for the Kapiti Classic, and a lot of those people had camper vans and all the rest of it. So if it was a prohibited area, are we able to, will there be sufficient flexibility in the bylaw to lift that prohibited area for a brief period?
Correct. If you refer to page 64 of the agenda and the draft bylaw, there's some provisions in there that allow for council to grant consent to a person to freedom camp in any prohibited area of a restricted area, contrary to restrictions or prohibitions that apply under certain grounds. And that is on the basis of, I think from memory, skirting through it, agreement through the chief executive.
All right.
On the spot. So there is the ability to do that, and for that flexibility to cater for one-off events and manage those opportunities. And also that equally goes with the ability and flexibility to close down sites for temporary reasons where there might be competing local pressures at a certain point in time that therefore doesn't make it available or appropriate for freedom camping during that period too.
Brilliant. Cool.
So the answer to that question
Good
is
paper.
yes. Councillor Halliday?
Yep, I've just got a question that's not relevant too much to this, but I just want clarity on it, and I'll do the rest in debate. But on page 57, it just talks to the piece of land down the southern end of Otaki Beach. And I know that that's been raised as an issue with regards to parking, and I see here that's to be identified as Crown land, not council land. So I was just curious, in how all this works, how does that sort of thing get managed? If people are parking down there, is it up to us to be dealing with that, or is Greater Wellington deal with that, or is it, because if it's an issue, just the question is.
Brendan's going to comment on that.
Not easily is the answer. It's quite complex, and it kind of links back to Nigel's question earlier. And so one of the first things that will happen post this bylaw is updated MOUs with all the other parties. So we have them. They're quite loose at the moment. They're quite old, but they are required. Where there's overlap, and so Otaki is a good example where there's, it's Lynn's land, Fenza got responsibility, GW got responsibility. We've got limited responsibility because it's not our land, but through MOUs we can do the work or help support other parties and do some monitoring on their behalf. So that's how it's supposed to work. It's a lot more complex than that, but it does require a bit of work. And then there's certain signage and education too, so we can act on their behalf through those MOUs to support and monitor these, but there will still be some challenges. So this just gives us a few more powers. It's not going to solve everything. You know, at the moment, all we can kind of monitor is nuisance behaviours, noise, in certain locations, but this will give us a bit more flexibility.
And I'm picking Nahapu over there. Kim will have this on their action list to be keeping an eye on. Yeah, cool. Okay.
Councillor Pravanov.
Yeah, thank you through the chair. This bylaw has been a long time coming, and I think it's been recognised that you know, we want to encourage freedom camping, but we want it to be great for everyone. And by having a bylaw, we do have some more control over that. One of the things, I've actually got a couple of things that I want to talk about. So, Councillor Coe mentioned infringements. There's nothing in there about fees, about infringement amounts. And I know that when we've gone through, I think it was the beach bylaw stuff, if you don't have any fees in there, it reverts to what the national guidelines are. And I don't know whether that is the case here, or if you don't actually set any infringement figures in here, then you can't actually implement it. And I think, don't you have to consult on them?
They're set specifically under the Act itself. I can't tell you what the quantum of those are, but the bylaw by virtue references back and has access to those ability of the infringements is set under the Freedom Camping Act.
Yes, so thank you, because I remember when we did the beach bylaw, that was exactly the situation, and I think the figures were about $750, and because of that figure, it was way too high for the police to actually enforce it. So I think we later on came in and put in figures which were much less, so they were more inclined to be enacted. So I'm just wondering whether or not we should be doing something like that as well. Particularly, you know, I don't know what those figures are, as you said, but if it's actually exorbitant, maybe we should be including something in here with those figures. And this is probably very last minute stuff, but if we don't do this now, it's going to be like this for 10 years, potentially.
It's a standardised approach, the infringement fees for all of New Zealand. So I don't know what they are directly. Looks like it's fines ranging to $400 to $800 potentially. But we can look at that as subject to feedback. Like I mentioned, it's a nationally consistent framework and accessibility to those infringement powers. So it's something we can look at potentially as part of the feedback if you're happy with that and looking to bring any final advice and information back.
Yeah, thank you. And so I'd be really interested to know whether any councils in updating or putting a bylaw of this nature in place, whether they've actually gone in and actually reduced those fees. So, you know, if people are, you know, I think, you know, certainly the softly approach is the first one to take, but having that arsenal in behind there is actually useful, but those figures are never going to be implemented. I wouldn't like to think they'd be implemented.
So I just wanted to note that MB has advised that they are looking to review the fees arrangement in the Act because they would agree with your comments that, with areas not mines, that it's not a fair way or fair or equitable way to set fees, and so they are looking to explore the opportunity of a tiered infringement / fees system. So we might come back and share more information about that with you.
Yeah, thank you. And as I said, it'd be really interesting to know whether in the interim other councils have actually set up their own fee structure, which is, you know, more consistent with what, you know, the issue potentially is. So that's my first point. The second one is in attachment 3 in our agenda, there is a list of, I suppose it's the reasoning for why a site is either able to have freedom of camping or not. And then in this the document that's just been circulated, there's some other stuff in here, and to me, they don't correlate particularly well. And so there's stuff in the council agenda versus the document we've just had that aren't there. And I think, so maybe just some comments on that.
Sorry, just in terms of the council agenda, are you referring to the table that,
Appendix
Of-
3,
Appendix 3?
starting on page 94.
Oh, assessment of sites.
Yeah.
And in the statement of proposal, you're referring to,
On page 9. Because like in there, so the Waikanae River mouth, Juteri Street, so that's listed as now being a prohibited freedom camping site, which I think is one of the key ones in Waikanae, and I potentially, there's been a lot of issues there previously, but I think we've actually worked very, very hard to resolve those, but there might be other reasonings for that site being removed. And so even when I try and figure out where it talks about that, I'm not even sure whether I can find it. Maybe so it's just about consistency, and actually having a good story to explain why, particularly that site.
I think with regards to Terry Street or the Waimiha Domain, it says there's been particular challenges because it is very, and over the years, it has been very, very popular for freedom camping visitors, but it's also a prime site for people to get down there for their white baiting, access to the beach and other areas. And I know there's also been increasing environmental pressures there as well for people parking beyond and on areas. So I know there's in particular key reserve considerations there. With the impact on the significance of the site and location and those increasing health and safety and access issues, which has resulted in that finding there of prohibiting that site. And that's also there's been considerations of other sites further down and along Waikanae that are less sensitive and less conflicting, I guess, around those health and safety and accessibility issues that have been identified as a consequence of the process as well.
So I hear that, and I suppose with that site there are key marked sites that people can park in, and I suppose by having some of those infringements options, then, if they're in the wrong place, then you can actually address it. But no doubt we'll get some feedback. And now the other comment that I wanted to make is that obviously we have a lot of outside visitors coming in here wanting to park. How is the comms actually going to get out to those people that some of these changes are actually going to occur?
I think the first step will be to get feedback on the proposal. And then once that feedback comes through, depending on how much feedback we get, it may be that we have a hearing. So you're able to hear from people about that feedback. And then you would approve effectively the bylaw, if that's where this lands. And then subject to that, we would be letting people know that a new bylaw has been introduced and these are the things that it features. So as part of our communications plan for that, we'd be looking to identify some general communications, but then some targeted areas, be it business or other interested parties, that we would think it was really important to have engaged.
So I suppose I'm thinking about some of the freedom, some of the camper companies, well, not the companies, but there's organisations out there about whether or not you're actually going to say to them, we are reviewing our bylaw.
We are.
So you will be doing that. That's great. Okay.
Yeah. We do have a list of people that we are engaging with, which I think...
Is in the agenda, right?
Yeah, it is in the
We
agenda.
can find it.
Yep.
Yeah.
We don't need to
Okay.
be taken through the agenda.
Okay, so thank you. And then just my last point is that I know, Hamish, you made some comment that some of this review is going to happen through the review of the reserves work, and I'm just wondering if through that work a site is then included for freedom camping. How is that going to be updated in this bylaw when it's only reviewed every 10 years?
So the review of a bylaw for 10 years is a minimum. So there's the ability to review and update where and as necessary.
Right.
So we can look at that. I think we allude to that where there are processes and other parks that
Okay.
are potentially identified under that reserves, we can look at the need to do specific updates to the schedule and processes, but it's something we'll look at as well just to see what kind of process needs to wrap around that. And that goes alongside the monitoring and managing ongoing as well, because
Yes.
other things might shift and change over time as well. So we don't want to put a line in the sand and then just stay fast for 10 years. But there's a balance in there too about how quickly and how often we respond. And
Thank you very much.
Great. So I just had a wee look online, and most of the councils I could find are aligning with the government fee structure. And actually, there's a proposed amendment to the Freedom Camping bylaw that New Plymouth Council did last year, which changed their fees to align with which put their fees higher to align with the government regulations from 200. So, I don't think I'd support proposing any lower fees like we did with the beach bylaw. I think that consistency is important. And also, if you want to have a look at how a proposed amendment might look, that would be a useful thing to have a look at in line, how adding the extra reserves and things might look. Yeah. It's a nice little piece of consultation, actually. Yeah, we'll just put Jocelyn's mic back on.
So thank you for that comment, but I'm just wondering whether it would be useful to have in the document what that fee structure is,
Okay,
or a link to it, just, yes, because I think it's the document's silent on it, but, in behind this, there are some,
Okay,
yeah,
good point.
thank you.
Councillor Coford?
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. I just enjoyed that comment or description that Hamish just made, a line in the sand. Just if I can beg to go back to the Otaki River Estuary camping area, we had serious overcrowding last Christmas holidays. We had people lined up to use the loo there. I think it's been vandalised since. And we weren't enjoying the camping in amongst the sand dunes, destroying the sand dunes. Could we have some clarification with regard to the area that's under the Kapiti District Council's authority there, and ways we can protect the sand dunes and stop the overcrowding, because it was serious last Christmas? Thank you.
Yes, yeah, it is a challenge. So we're referring to the south end,
Yes.
not the toilets.
There is a single toilet down there, but it's
Yeah.
the river estuary
Yeah.
area that goes northwards into the
Yeah.
sand dunes in the residential area.
Yeah, and so the challenge there, and this is a hot topic. It does come up frequently. We are aware, and it's a fairly important piece of land, for a lot of people. The challenge there is, there's 3 or maybe even 4 different landowners. Our piece of land is almost at the access. The strip along the beach is Lynn's, although they've come back recently and they've got a question mark next to that. You got GW with a bit of land. And then everyone's kind of got different roles and responsibilities to manage it. So Fens have got kind of responsibility around, the lighting of fires. GW more around the ecological environment. Our only powers down there are really just around the nuisance behaviours. So we can't do much more than monitor that. And so it is a challenge. This bylaw will help improve or give us more responsibility or to enforce the rules, but it's not going to solve everything. It'll just require a more concerted effort with the 3 or 4 different parties to manage it. And so it is a challenge. The next step, like we talked about before, is to improve the MOUs with the other parties, so we can support each other to enforce the rules and improve signage and all that. It is just, it's not easy, and so we are reliant on Lindsay's support. They have sent through updated signage for that area that we can install and we can to monitor, but there is still a bit of work to do. Yeah.
Thank you. It keeps coming up at the Friends of the Otaki River meetings. I think quite a few members of that organisation would be, me included, would be keen to be an ambassador, for the area, and just as an educational thing, that could help. But we really need to do some action before next Christmas. Thank you.
Yeah, I've had correspondence about that issue as well. Councillor Kirby?
Just a quick question from me, and I've tried again this morning to see if I can find it. I can't see anything in relation to next steps for this, outside of submission period and the potential for submitters to speak to council. Will this bylaw come back to councillors via a workshop or a briefing or something to enable us to respond to what we've received through the consultation, and also our own reflections through it to be able to add to the bylaw or change it? And if so, could you, would it be appropriate for us to formalise that that is happening as part of us going out to consult, is that there is an opportunity for us to make changes to this, because it doesn't make this clear to me in the agenda.
That's what usually happens, and we could note that that will happen. Yeah.
Okay.
There's usually an opportunity to consider submissions through these processes.
That may alleviate some of the questions that sit around the table still, because there's going to be next opportunity after we've had some feedback.
Maybe I can note that our usual process is that we would take those steps that you have tabled. However, we normally wouldn't put it as a note in a paper, because that is just part of the process that we operate. I can confirm that that is going to happen for the record, if that's useful. And the reason I'm saying it this way is that it hasn't been or is not part of the precedent we have in terms of what we put notes or noting recommendations in. And if we did that, we'd add other things in. So you would have a lot of noting recommendations. But I can confirm that we do that. We are planning to do that. It will happen.
For
You will
clarity,
have
I
that.
wasn't proposing a noting recommendation.
right.
I was just noting it.
Right, yes.
Hence
okay.
the purpose of my question, was
Great.
to make that clear,
Yes.
that there will be next steps with this bylaw. Thank you.
Councillor Halliday?
Yeah, mine's just a quick question on clarity, to be honest. As an example, just what was talked about around where you can park and where you can't park. And I just wanted to use Te Horo Beach as an example, just get some clarity on this. And the toilets there's got a car park attached to it, as you know, but I note that it's in a natural open space zone. So that hasn't been picked up. It's part of this consultation because it's got a different zoning, if you like. Does that mean that people can just generally park down there if it's not on the areas that can't be parked on? Because if you like, there's a big car park right there, which is ideal for people to back up to, and that's as such. And but it's not covered anywhere. I don't pick it it's an oversight. Actually, I'm thinking it's more of a classification of the land as such. Here you go. Oh, they're not on. It's not on there. It hasn't been covered. I'm picking it might be getting picked up in what Brendan was saying with regards to the management plans for the parks as such. So we've obviously got bits of land like that dotted around the district. What would happen if someone was parked there as such? It's just not covered, so it's okay.
I'm going to make the comment because we're working a bit on the fly, looking at screens.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. We're happy to take offline any questions about particular areas.
No, that's cool.
And confirm where that sits, because I do understand that it isn't as clear cut as it could be, because there's lots of different bits coming in. And what we'll endeavour to do is any of the questions that we respond to offline will ensure that we add that as appropriate to FAQs in case someone else has interest in those points through our consultation.
I'm picking as a certain friends of a certain area group that might put a submission in regards to this. And we will pick it up as part of the process anyway. So no, that's all good. Yeah.
Councillor Wilson?
Yeah, I just want to move it.
Yes. Moved by Councillor Wilson, seconded from the chair. Right of introduction?
Just to note, this is a consultation document. We're going out to consult. We're not actually doing it here today. So, yeah, it's fabulous. It's plenty of information in there.
Councillor Halliday?
Yep, look, just endorsing those words, been a long time coming, but great to see that it's here. I think it times in quite nicely with regards to the tourism strategy and all those other sorts of things that we're talking about as well. So sometimes the alignment of these things, even if they're delayed, sometimes that can work in a positive way as well. What I would note is that I think the brochure idea is a great idea with regards to ambassadors. The reason I say that, having travelled around the country in a camper van, everyone's really keen to tell you where they can't park, but it's actually quite hard to find where you can if you don't necessarily know. And having the clarity where you can park can be quite handy, and it also can help promote longer stays as people move around the district potentially as well. But great piece of work. I want you to look at clarity when you can park versus where you can't. Linkage and the ambassadors. No, that's really all I want to talk to that. Look forward to seeing what the feedback is coming in and getting this landed so that we can tie it into our tourism strategy, business associations, and then tie it into how they market and how they move forward as well. So it'll be interesting to see what the next steps are.
Thank you, Councillor Halliday. Councillor Coe?
Yeah, look, I just want to clarify this statement of proposal that we have now. Is this what we're approving today? Because I think it needs...
You might want to look at the recommendations, and that
Yeah.
answers your question.
Yeah, well, it says there, approve the statement of proposal as is. I just am concerned that I don't think this is a user-friendly document, and
Well, then you can vote against the
yeah,
recommendation.
so I would like to recommend that we go over this with a comms lens and look at how we can make it more user-friendly to the public out there. In the question time, we noted some things that need clarification, and I just, to me, it needs like a simple thing of here's what we're asking you to look at and give us feedback on, and some more technical details perhaps in the back end of the document. It just needs to be, in my view, presented differently to make it more user-friendly and to encourage feedback.
So I don't think the
So-
user-friendly bit, sorry, we're in debate, I don't think the user-friendly bit is what you'd have in a statement of proposal. I think the user-friendly would be where you put out the information to consult on, which will be done through comms, through our Have Your Say page, through that process. This reads like a statement of proposal usually reads. A statement of proposal is a statement of proposal, and this is what they pretty much always look like. What we
Right.
go out with for consultation won't be this. It'll go through comms. It'll be on the Have Your Say. It will be, have clear explanations. That's something that will be at an operational level, designed and go out for consultation.
Well, that was
This
the
is a
point.
statement of proposal,
Well,
and
that was
that's
the
what
point
they
of my
look like.
question that I asked earlier, because it wasn't clear that there would be an additional document to cover this. So that's why I asked that question. Is this what we're approving to go out for consultation? But it's not this alone. There is something on top of it. Is that correct?
Yes.
Right. Okay. So those concerns can be addressed in
We've
that
been asked to
document.
approve the formal documents to allow us to consult on a bylaw.
Right.
We're not approving the content of the consultation
Okay.
today.
Thank you. That's what I needed clarification on. Yep. Thank you.
Okay, any more debate? Right of reply? Okay, I'll put that to the vote. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, that's carried. Thank you. So we move on to order of candidates' names on voting documents for the 2025 local body elections. This one should be pretty quick, particularly as nobody around the table has a surname starting with A. Okay, I'll pass over to Jessica. Jessica Mackman is going to introduce this paper. Thank you.
Thank you. Through the chair, kia ora koutou. This report is asking Council to resolve the order in which candidates' names appear on the voting documents for the local body election later this year. There are 3 options which are outlined in the report. I will take the report as read and we are happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
Yeah.
Councillor Wilson?
Yep. The voting booklet, who control, do we control that?
Are you speaking about the candidate profile that
Yeah.
accompanies the voting documents? So the order of names in the candidate profile is alphabetical.
Yeah.
So if you choose a different order, then you may have the voting documents in one order and the candidate profile booklet in another order.
Unfortunately, with the profile booklet, you can't be random.
No, we cannot
Unless
dictate.
you want to print
we can't dictate the order.
20,000 different booklets. So at best, you could have a pseudo-random for the booklet, presumably.
No, we can't
You
dictate
can't?
the
Is
order
that
of the
is that
booklet. The
determined
booklet
by
is
central government
alphabetical.
legislation, that it has to be alphabetical? I'm not sure that it does, so that's a question.
So under the Act, you can choose the order of candidate names on the voting documents.
Yeah.
I don't think there is anything in the Act, and we'd have to take that offline, for you to control the candidate booklet. So therefore, the candidate booklet will be alphabetical. I'd have to take that offline, whether it could be done in any other way, but that is generally controlled by a central group that kind of decides how that booklet is going to be across the nation. So it's not every single council deciding what that booklet may look like. So there's the same look and feel to it, because some people will be voting for different elections.
Yes, that's right.
So
Yeah.
I can take it offline whether there is an option to change that, but I feel the answer will likely be no. But you have the power to decide the order of the candidate names on the voting documents.
On the way, yeah.
Okay.
That's my only question. Yep.
Councillor Halliday?
Sorry, just want to get a bit of clarity here. Pseudo-random order versus random order. Pseudo-random is where they literally pulled out of a hat and then that's set, whereas the random order is every voting document is different. Is that right?
That is correct, yes. So
Okay.
random means that every voting document has a different order, whereas pseudo-random, the names are drawn once and that random order is used for every voting document.
Cool. And what's the, I'm sure it's here, sorry, I missed it. What's the current system that's used?
So we've used random for the last 2 local body elections.
Okay, well, I'm happy to move A3 in the recommendations, Madam
Do I
Chair.
have a seconder? Councillor Handford? Right of introduction?
Waived.
Any debate? I'll put that to the vote. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, that's carried.
Excellent.
Thank you very much. 11.5, reports and recommendations from community boards.
I would note for the Mayoralty, there's 3 H's and a K at the moment. No, it's not there, Wilson.
So this is a fairly simple one
I'm
this
happy to
time,
move
as
this,
there were no
Madam Mayor.
recommendations. So we're just taking a look at the wonderful things the community boards have been up to.
Happy to move.
Moved by Councillor Kirby, seconded by Councillor Handford. Right of introduction.
Waived.
Mr. Moore, would you like to
I'd-
highlight something in the document?
Yes, I'd just like to note that the Omnibus Reserve Management Plan was postponed in our Waikanae board meeting of the 11th of March. Not the 11th, sorry, the 4th. So we didn't discuss that and present that because of timing.
It's probably important that that's noted in the minutes. Thank you. Okay. I'm assuming there's no debate, so
Actually, I
I'll
have
put
a question.
Councillor Pravanov.
Thank you. I just want to double check that that these delegations, that none of these delegations take any delegations away from elected members or from councillors.
We're not on that yet.
Oh, where are we?
We're on reports and recommendations from
Oh,
community
sorry,
boards.
sorry.
Sorry, we are moving at pace, so
Yeah, okay.
completely understandable. So I'm moving the recommendation, just to be clear, on page 114, which is that we received the report. That's been moved by Councillor Kirby, seconded by Councillor Hanford. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, that's carried. Thank you. Now we're moving on to amendments to council delegations to staff, 11.6.
Kia ora koutou. We have Fiona Story. I think most here will know Fiona Story, but Fiona Story is Manager Legal Compliance and Complaints in my team. So Fiona will speak to the report today.
Kia ora, Fiona.
Kia ora koutou. So I'm just introducing the report on the amendments to council delegations to staff. I'll take it largely as read, just noting that there's 2 additional acts that are requiring delegations. That's the Fast Track Approvals Act and the Water Services Act, plus there's a few further delegations under the RMA. Can probably pick up the question that came through earlier, if that's all right.
Yeah, sure.
So these are just things that have been identified through our ordinary monitoring and review process as part of our BAU and improving things. There's no changes and it's not taking any delegations away. So happy to answer any other questions.
Any other questions, Councillor Wilson?
No, I just want to move it.
So we're moving recommendations A and B on page 117. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Spires. So it's moved by Councillor Wilson, seconded by Councillor Spires. Right of introduction.
Well, it's fairly straightforward, actually. As Fiona's pointed out, the reason for it is fairly obvious. So, and it's not a major deviation from anything. So it's business as usual, and it's fine.
Any further debate? All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? It's carried. Thank you. So, confirmation of minutes, page 134. Oh, no. Yes.
Happy to move, Madam Mayor.
Moved by Councillor Kirby, seconded by Councillor Spires.
Except I can't.
You can't. Moved by Councillor Spires. Seconded by Councillor Pravanov. All in favour, please say aye. Against, it's carried. So, could I have a mover, please, that we move in public excluded? Moved by Councillor Halliday, seconded by Councillor Wilson. No. Seconded by Councillor Coe. Moved by Councillor Halliday, seconded by Councillor Coe. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, that's carried. And we move into